Thank you for joining us today. Hi, Dominic.
Hello.
Really happy to see you. You're doing your Seinfeld voice again. Um, Today it's our customer showcase, but pretty much it's going to be a Drakya showcase. It seems that you guys are busy, and it's more and more difficult to find people to come and present, which might have a couple of questions in terms of the format and the next step in terms of the agenda. But today I do believe we still have some interesting content to show you based on how Drakya is using also Client on top. So as you know, Drakya is not only an implementation partner, but Drakya has been a customer of Client since the beginning, since its inception. So Drakya has been built around Client. So we did a lot of customization in the tools. A lot of those customization are also interesting for Drakya's customers. So we did replicate a lot of it. There's a couple of things we're going to show you today, and the Drakya and the customer of Drakya are also influencing the client roadmap. So this is, I think, where it's become interesting that we have those two sides of things, and Drakya has that privileged relationship with the customer when it comes to requirements and the future and the vision for all those customers. So this being said, today customer showcase. Next week we're doing invoicing. Client keynote, it's fine. We have a lot to cover in terms of the process, the different tools associated with it, and we can also go a bit maybe deeper in terms of architecture, so you understand better how it's really built. After that, we have a couple of customers in mind that would be awesome to showcase on this one customer showcase of the invoicing, the 17th of February. This being said, if we don't find people for the customer showcase, I'm open to your suggestion in terms of what you want to see. I'm fine with doing with Drakya, showing stuff of Drakya all the time, but it is really good and really cool to see you guys using the system. So please feel free to reach out if you have an interest to showcase any kind of the remaining topic. Where I'm thinking that we might change a little bit to keep the spice or keep the entertainment going, we might move analytics and reportings and services sooner. So maybe we're going to swap one or two just so we can cover a little more. I know from your comments, the reporting part was something that people were looking forward to. So we might increase it. And my kid just came for lunch. So our key, the module we're looking at today, it's execution. So we'll be looking at specifically in a couple of items. Last week, we've looked at the mobile timesheet, the new mobile timesheet. Today, Dominic's going to show us something about Touchpoint, which is a tools that Drakya use. It's a custom things that Drakya use, but we do believe at Client that it might be a nice addition to the product. So it is on our roadmap to add something similar. So like I said, we're going to see two custom development of Drakya. One is going to be the timesheet validation and notification. To really, this process is really to control the timesheet process and making sure that your people, our people are logging their time, that they're logging it on time, and that there's a proper process around approvals and everything related to time entry. That's the first part. I'm going to do that one. And after that, Dominic's going to do the touch point, which I believe is an awesome object. For me, I couldn't live without my calendar. Meeting, the way I'm structuring everything, and I'm trying to structure also the businesses is based a lot about the interaction we have with our customer or internally. So Drakya has built an object called Touchpoint that's going to help. That helps a lot to keep track and structure everything related to our customer meetings and also internal meetings. Dominic, is there something you want to add on this?
Nope,
at this one?
good introduction.
Yeah. And if we have some time and if there is some interest, we can look on the time objects and the related architecture if need be. Like we were saying the other day, I can talk about it in a few seconds, but the timesheet splits is quite often used in report to really get the proper consumption of hours and revenue per date. So if we want, we can explore that if we have time at the end. Please feel free to write some question in the Q&A. Well, I don't see the panel at all. Dominic, I will
I'll
need
keep
to
an eye
rely
on it.
on
I
you.
do have it. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. let's get going. Oop, no, not this. So I'm going to switch to Drakya environment. Okay, so this is a dashboard that I'm being playing with recently. It's something similar to the one I've shown you in the environment, the demo environment, the one with the deep dive tech company. This one though, it's really based on my latest focus in terms of hours. So first, it's a dashboard. The idea of the notification plugin or application I'm showing here, it's really to control everything related to timesheet and the timesheet process. So it always quite frankly start with the dashboard. This dashboard here, there's a filter. So it's filtering on dates. So either this week or last week, this month, last month, and you can define whatever you want to put here as a filter. And you have several components in it. And what I want to talk about, besides looking at number, is that we have something here called missing timesheet, meaning that people that might not have entered a timesheet yet, timesheet that have not been submitted. That's fine because we're only Wednesday, so we're only submitting our timesheet on Friday. So it's normal that people didn't submit it yet, and timesheet that might have been submitted but not approved yet. So this dashboard, I consume it, yes, at the end of the week, but I consume it pretty much every day to see if we're tracking in terms of our billable and non-billable. I'm going to add a few components in regards of the ratio. This week is going not that bad. If we look at last week, what we're going to look at is first that billable ratio is going to stand up. So it's part of the process as well to make sure that the company is going well. So billable ratio was pretty low last week. We've addressed it. We've talked about it with the team. We're on a part of inner growth, so we're doing a lot of things internally, so it makes sense. But we still want to be structured. And here, for example, we also want to make sure that our people are doing their 40-hour timesheet. So we have a table here with conditional formatting. That's an interesting thing of a dashboard. You can see the everything above 40 hours is going to be in green, and the only two in red. It's fine because as you see, we're using a naming convention with the X. It's an external resources. So those are external consultant. We're not expecting them to do 40 hours, but they are the only two outlier here. And as you can see, everything is clean. There's no missing timesheet for last week, and there's no not submitted timesheet, and there's nothing to approve. Everything has been done. So this is interesting, and I won't show you the details, but here you have the split comments, so you can read every details, everything that people log in, depending on your level and how many direct reports you have in terms of timesheet. It's easier to consume those on a daily basis than just to wait at the end of the timesheet, so at the end of the cycle. So this is the dashboard linked to that tools. Just to enforce this, Drakya has built automation about those missing timesheet, not submitted, and the not approved hours. So meaning that at a specific date on Friday, for example, at 4, an email is going to be sent out to anybody that would not have completely fully the timesheet. So that's the automation that's been built on top. Okay, Drakya sells this as a product, as a fixed fee product that we sell through Client to our tools, but we use products at Client. So I'm going to do a segue about something else, but we use products, and this is the standard Salesforce product. When you have Sales Cloud, you have access to those products, and we have one here called Timesheet Validation and Notification. As you can see, we also have one Touchpoint. There's no price, there's no description because we're not ready yet to sell it. But this one at Drakya, we already sell it as a standalone component. So just what I want to show you here is just, we have a description, but I want to show you the screenshot of what it does. So first, it's configurable per resource. So for example, here we have Jeremy resource, and we have, when you install that package, you have new fields. So one is exclude from missing timesheet. So if you don't want that resource to receive any notification. And the other one here is the number of hours you're expecting for your timesheet for this specific resource. After that, the way it works, it can be either an automated process, so we can run on every day or every specific day, or you can run it manually. So there you have an interface, you just select the day, do you want to receive your results by email? And then it's going to just continue and run, and it's going to generate an email that's going to be sent out to the resource, but also to the manager to tell them a status. So this is what the package that we've built at Drakya, just to help some customer, but that we also start using internally to really control better our timesheet process. Maybe just a side note when it's fun because we're talking about customs thing, but because this is a fixed fee, usually we don't do fixed fee, we're time and expense, but we also want to track, for example, to which customer we've deployed it. So for example, here we have a deployment object. So here I can create a new deployment. Let's say I deploy to a new customer. So it's going to make the link from the account to the specific project, and I can have an installation date. That's also something interesting that we did for tracking the different fixed fee simile product. We're not a product team, but still on the Drakya side.
And that's being done in the sense that we, there's the missing timesheet that clients offers, but if you have, because, as missing timesheet, there's no record. So it's not like you can, look at, a missing timesheet. It doesn't exist. So that's why there's that mechanism that exists with client. But we wanted to combine that with all the other possibilities, as Yanick said, is that we get partial timesheets submitted or not approved. And, all of those there are combined into one tool, so that we can send an email. But we're considering all those different um,
Parameter.
channels or
Yeah.
parameters. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So that's it for that part of it. The idea though would be definitely for every one of you to enforce the a process around timesheets. So you should start building your own dashboard for that if you don't have one already. Dominic, can you force me out as a presenter? Like I said, I don't have the bar.
No, I can. No.
You cannot. Might have to
Hit one of your screen.
logged in differently than usual. It's here. No, I don't have it. But,
Can
I'm
you
gonna leave
assign?
the meeting and come back. Give me a sec. I'm assigning you as host.
No, that would be perfect. Excellent. So I can take over. So I'm going to share. So basically, the part I wanted to show here is, as a PM or even as part of that sales process. Yanick talked about that touch point. And where we wanted to do is to try and make the different, our meeting as actionable as possible. So everything that comes out of a meeting, a touch point with a customer or internal meetings that we might have, uh, we want to do something out of it. So it's just, one thing is taking notes, yes, but how, out of those notes we might have decisions, new task. There's a few things that would need to be, transform into action somehow, next steps or customer tasks. So, all of that is more or less within the project, but there weren't anything that was kind of getting everything together. So that's why, and I'm showing my project here. We have an object, one of them that is called Touchpoints, and we also have something else I'm not going to cover, but we have project contacts also that we're using into our Touchpoints somehow. So these are kind of, when we're doing meetings, who are we dealing with, and how, what are we taking out of those? And as I said, it's either internal and external. So in the sales process, we'd use that also, and then in project management also. So in this case, I'm going to put a hat of a project manager. I'm starting a new project. I have this new project that I've just kicked off internally, and now we're ready to prepare for that first one-on-one with the customer. So this is where we're at. Want to generate that because we just planned it with the customer and prepare for it, and then drive that meeting after, and eventually wrap up that meeting, send the notes, and make actions out of that meeting. So just right from here, as on my project, we have a button. It's called New Touchpoint, and one thing I haven't mentioned is this is one way also that we are using internally, and so that we can have better onboardings also? How can we provide guidance when we have those new steps that we feel that we need to do in the project management? And how can we make sure that when we have new people coming in, that they would know what to do, what the, you know, where the information might be. So that's one way that we're using on top of skills and other things that we are using internally, where we can provide that guidance. So in this case, I'm going to use my template, which is first contact. We have one for pretty much any process we might have internally, and I'm going to generate that from that one. And you'll see there's a lot that will come from that, and we'll be able to see that. Types is really just for us to regroup and sort. And we'll see that now we have here, we could set a quick agenda if it was not using a template, or even something that would be specific to a task. But at this point, that's what I'm going to do. So rather quick. Now it's just a date and a template. That's the mandatory fields that, not mandatory, but the fields I'm going to use. So this just created a new touch point, and we could just briefly hover over it and see what it's comprised of. But as least as a starter, so when it came out of my template, is that, you know, as we're saying, providing guidance to internal employees, or even as a kind of a brain dump for us also. You know, we have stuff that we need to do. We know in this step there's a few actions we need to take, and this is kind of providing it for us. So first thing, we have that link to a project. We can have a link to opportunities, because even if I'm now in sales, I'd still use that also for opportunities. So when I'm doing scoping, I would use that. If I'm doing a discovery or project plan, and budget delivery, I would still use that also. So that can be linked to a few things. We can address who's the main contact there, and even internally, if we're doing internal meetings, one-on-ones, stuff like that, we even track it for the project resource. So when we're doing, you know, performance assessments, that's stuff that we can also use here. So the agenda, so that came over. We'll see it here that we have some key fields here that are really the outputs of those meetings. So the takeaways, the next steps. Eventually, we'll see budget and even additional information also that we have. We have Touchpoint slides. So we're a Google shop here, so we use Google Slides and Google Docs. So if we're preparing a deck, then we would have something here that we would put up, and so that if we prepared it up front, when we get to our meeting, we don't need to go and dig in every files and folders we have. It's really directly linked here. And at the end, we'll also have a touch point recording. So when we record, that's going to be put there. Serves as internal information transfer. Again, that knowledge, lessons learned and knowledge transfer from one resource to another. We have that neat and nightly placed into our projects. But also you'll see after we can send that summary to the customer. This is how we do it also. I'll show you at the end where we use email templates to send all that information. Okay, so let's say if, you know, I'm ready here, I'll go over those other things after here, but really I've set up my meeting. I might have probably my slides already, so I'll do my meetings. As we're in the meeting, this is something that I often show also. So, you know, it's something that if we're kind of using that to leverage with the customer, to say, and I said I would say leverage a lot less. Have a few synonyms that I've looked up, so I'll try not to do leverage again this meeting.
Alan,
So
it's okay.
to maximize the use of really of everything that is client, and the transparency, we often show that up to our meetings. So when we're doing PM meetings, weekly, you know, tracking reviews with the customers, I'd show that up on the screen. So we see the agenda, and eventually we even see the notes there. So that's something that we use even customer facing. So one thing that we do, and we're doing this just because we're kind of using as much possible different tools of Salesforce. If I was to take my note directly in the field, that's something I could do. It's a rich text field. You see, I have some flexibility on the formatting, obviously, but this is not necessarily auto saving. So I've been squeezed a few times where for some reason, you know, it's a snowstorm or a thunderstorm or whatever. So there's a, you know, electricity shutdown. So you just lose your notes. So the way we're working with that so that it doesn't occur is that we're using the notes from Salesforce, because those notes here are self-saving or auto-saving, which is very nice, so that you're not losing anything. You know, if there's something that occurred with your computer or any other issues you might have. So I just hit a button here so that we have a flow that we've built so that you have the agenda. So you could, that's what, when I say I was showing this to the customer, I could have that up front showing the agenda, and I could start, out of transparency here, taking my notes so that the customer also sees what we're talking about. And, it clarity, for clarity's sake also, that might be interesting. So I would be using notes directly, because if I use this, you'll see at the bottom it automatically saves. So if anything happens, I'm not lost, I have everything. So that would be where I'm taking all my notes as we're doing the call. And then once I debrief my with my internal team or by myself after, then I would use that information and kind of put it away into the different fields so that my touch point is kind of neat and clean, and we can send it to the customer after. Okay, so let me just do that. So let's say I'm simulating. I spared you the typing, so I just copy paste an example of stuff that could be occurring at a meeting, different examples that we would now transform into actionable items, really, because now notes is kind of done by itself. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to send any task or any request or track any information other than if it is searchable, obviously, but it's not actionable at this point. So let's, at the end of the meeting, this is what we would be doing. So I took my notes, and this is where we come back in and now kind of put it so that it's a customer facing and it's for for posterity also. It makes sense. So I'd come back and just probably put my different items there in each of those sections so that we can I'll see later be able to send meeting notes to the customer. Out of this, you see, I might have a new task or something that we've discussed that, during the meeting, something we need to track. Either it's a backlog, it's an idea that we said, okay, yes, good idea. We'll put that into backlog. And if we have time, we'll circle back to it. Might be a task that the customer said, yes, I want you to go forward and do this. So for this, these are really something that needs to affect your project plan. So I'm going to take that one here. And as you see, we have a few options. This is the easiest way we found so that we could say, I'm going to add a new task here. So right from my touch point, no need to go back to my Gantt or, to change that. Right from here, I can directly input a new task, put that into, let's say, in this case, I'm going to say it's going to be in my backlog. I could even go and assign it to myself, to someone in the project, or this is where we're talking about, I talked about the project contacts, is that if we create you into our project as a customer, you could be assigned a task. So if we were to say you have a new homework, Mr. Customer or Madam Customer, then we can directly assign it as a customer staff if we want it. Let's say it's a billable task, something the customer asked us eventually. We could even put our estimated hours right from here. And if we have a start date, end date that we know of, then we could put that in. So we don't need to put those. It's just that if they're already accepted, then we could proceed with estimating it.
This is the kind of button that Tim also showed us that it's you can easily build within your system to just capture or add something that might be missing or a button somewhere that you don't have that capacity usually. You can easily customize those buttons. So that's the same thing as a Salesforce admin. It's easy to do.
So you'll see, and if I scroll down, you see I have a section. So we're maximizing the use of client here so that we have that tracked in. So when if I go back to my task or any of those things that I would have to added to my project, I can. That's also serves as a putting back into context. There's a new task on your Gantt chart. Maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now, you don't recall in what context that was brought up. The task will relate to that touch point also, so I can circle back to this and kind of put myself back into the context of where it was added, the notes, the recording, probably all those things would kind of be linked together. So really, it's a lot more depth to the information as we're adding it. The other thing that is also that we're using is the checklist. So if let's say it's let's say initial install or something that we've done, something that was brought up by the customer that we need to circle back and review, the checklist also can be added. So for any task here, let's say it's initial config in my case, I'm trying to add something that I need to circle, to look back into or inform my solution admin that we should revise something. That's one way we could have, all the way to 10 items here in this case. So quick and easy way to add new checklists to an existing task. And the other thing, which is, I think, very interesting as far as when you take decisions, is that a confirmed decisions or an actual or pending decision? In our case, let's say we have a proposal to get some new automations in there. It might not be part of the hours initially. We're time and expense, but we like to get approval on the budget in this case. So we do track decisions on our project. So that's something else also that we are tracking right off of that touch point, so that we have that historical tracking of those different decisions. In this case, this is a custom object. It's not an object from client itself, but rather simple, honestly, where we can track that detail, description, further information. I would circle back there if I were to have an approval, because if we ask for further budget, I would ask for an email confirmation so that everything's clean and clear for everyone, and I would probably add that confirmation from the customer here. So a bit of context here is interesting. We track pending or confirmed, and when was that decision done. So here it's gonna have that information added to the project, added to my touch point, and someone comes into my touch point, they'll be able to kind of have that tracking of what occurred there. And if I was to, other things, this one we haven't been using it, but just a good idea I thought of eventually. We're not necessarily using it, but question and answer. So if customer were to ask some questions, we have a slide that we use in an Excel spreadsheet when in our matrix, but something that could be interesting in the future, stuff that should be answered that weren't and are pending to be answered. And we have issues that we're also using. So that if there's any issues that we need to bring up with clients, stuff that we need to use open a case for, we would track those right here and add them to our project, our accounts, our contacts, and that would also be tracked on the touch point. So really, I think it's pretty all 360 degrees. It's coming from customer, sending back to customer, applying to our project plan, but centralized thing where we can do pretty much anything here.
This is our attempt at Drakya to try to structure our interaction so we can repeat and get better, and also so we can grow faster. So to align our procedures or our process, we're using a lot of touch points. So for example, yesterday we were talking about our recruiting process, and now we're thinking that we should probably create different touch point templates for each type of interview we're doing. And this way it can have its own checklist, it can have its own agenda, you can know what you need to do before and after. So we're using it more and more. I do believe that object has a lot of value. The decision object, it's something simple that most probably clients should have already, but it's not decision. It's really what kind of decision, like project management standard stuff. You track all the decision about your project. We allowed more budget, like you said. Are we deciding to drop one feature because we're not ready for it? So it's a good object. So this being said, I think this putting a new object together and then linking all the other one of client, it's great. And I'm guessing it's also give you some ideas for you guys, our customers.
But wait, I'm not done, Yanick.
Yeah, I know that's the most exciting part for me. So, do you want me to put my my collar on it? This is for me. You've mentioned memory before, but when I'm doing, for example, when I was doing sales to operation ends off, like exactly that list. Like, do we need an NDA? We confirm the number of license. We prep the deck. So there's a lot of step usually when you're doing end off. So having like that template, loading a task checklist. Now we're using the Salesforce Tasks, so I don't want to mix up everything, but that checklist for me, it's essential because that's the way that I can always make sure that I'm going to do all the different steps. So, Dominic.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's one point that I even mentioned is that when we brought over that template, that's one, there was the agenda, there was that guidance and a few informations, but yeah, we do use also Salesforce tasks just for reminders here as we can expose it slightly differently. So we use checklists for project management. as you see, stuff that we track on an actual task. But these are kind of more of a reminder. Instead of having that, we used to have it in the Google reminders and stuff. Okay, yeah, I should call next week. I should, follow up on this, or did I do this or that? So really, it's more of a, global checklist in this case that we're
And we
using.
mainly use that because it was easy just to do the check, check, check.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's not a perfect architecture. This, if we had to put that touch point within client,
We
this we
wouldn't.
would probably redesign a little bit. But yeah, the use of Salesforce tasks at another level that are not project necessarily oriented, it's a good way to just track your personal to-dos as well. Okay, awesome.
So the other thing, just to wrap up, one other thing that we have and that we use here is, and just to show you as far as we're into execution, we have the budget status update that we're sending. So it's something that we send usually in our implementation or even in our engagement, or continuous engagement or growth engagement that we have, where we inform the customer or the stakeholder. So that one person that puts their hand in the pocket to pay us, we want them to make sure that they know where we're at and how we've consumed their budget. So we have something that looks into the timesheet splits. So really, we're not necessarily in this case using any of the roll-ups. We're at every time we're calculating the information from the timesheet split. So we're always sure that we're not relying on other automations. We're using that as close as possible to
It's
the
a good big
information.
question of dates as well to make sure that
The
what we're
dates,
doing
everything is
underneath
good.
and we're recalculating stuff. Yeah.
So here what we is it's our it's our take at it really straight. We have information that is from the project itself. We have some hours that are forecasted, and then we're calculating here based on our rules of what is number of hours we've burned and how many hours are remaining. But at this point, before I send it to the customer, because we're still at the end of that meeting, I need to send those notes, and I want to include that in there. One thing that I might have done is that my meeting that I just did, I didn't put my time in. So, we've talked about, I think QuickTime is something that sometimes we'd use. So I'd go with my projects and I could input my time directly from here of, finding my task. And here I'm going to have, let's say, an hour of meeting that I've spent today. So
Billable.
that's,
Do you need to put it billable?
and put a billable
Yeah.
here. So I'm going to save it. That's adding to my timesheet in the background, but I don't need to go out of my meeting, and then I can just go back and generate again that calculation. Instead of 2.5, now I'm 3.5. So I'd be okay. So I'm good. I'm clean. And then I can just update my touch point. It's going to take a snapshot of that information and put it onto my project, so that all the information I need to send for my customer are all ready there.
There's out of the box. There's the project status that exists. Drakya wanted to build something a bit different and more custom to them, and we wanted to be able to generate it and send it by email. So that's why we built that thing. I think as well the status, the project standard out of the box project status has some usefulness that we can maybe brainstorm with you guys, our customer, to see how we can improve in the future. But this is our take at Drakya on a budget status update, which then can be sent by email.
And just to wrap this up, really my last step here, obviously we're using Chatter also if we need to, and mention people internally so that we bring him in into maybe stuff that needs to be reviewed. And we have email. So right from here, I haven't said, we're using a generate email output. So we're gathering all that information and putting it into something that will be consumable or can be used by that email template. But here, really, that's where we'd go. We have some templates that the team can use so that we gain time here. So we're spending the time on making sure that we have, as I said, actionable items and making sure our notes are good, but we don't want to spend time retyping everything in there. So we're trying to streamline that as much as possible. So you see here, this is where I get my recording as I get my email from Zoom and kind of file it into our documents, my slides if I need to share it. And then everything here is really based on dynamic fields. So it kind of looks really kind of funky here, but if I was to look into my preview email, you'll see that everything I've put on my project is now found on my email, and I don't need to retype anything. So I have my takeaways, I have the decisions I've added. Maybe I don't have any new customer homeworks, I'll be able to remove that from my email. I have some new tasks that are added, and I have my budget status update. So this is and the next step here that I do. So everything comes out of my notes. I'm spending more time making them intelligent and then just sending it over and using that as much as possible to the customer. So then hitting send would have that. Everyone's happy. Everyone's as is on the same page. And I don't have to track in a separate spreadsheet or something else. Everything is in there and visible by anyone in the project.
Great. Definitely streamline our meetings. It keeps all the information. It acts as a second memory. It's difficult to keep track of everything when you're in project. Each project are quite similar. So being able to really capture, then it's a question of execution. So now it's onboarding and user adoption of this that's important. So we do have some matrix on top of touch points. So pretty much every project should have a touch point per week. So we do monitor that as well on top. But yeah, it's a great object. I've seen a couple of comments. It seems that it could be of interest for a few of you. So most probably this is gonna definitely made it to our final roadmap at Client. We'll see the timeline of it though, and the complexity of it. But something like this is most definitely helping structuring, and it's aligned with the vision of where we want to bring Client to ease up the job and empower your team with good tools.
Just that we're still here. I had a question about the decision, maybe in what cases that could be used. The example I gave is the if ever we're asking for added budget or a change or something that might was out of scope that is now into scope. That would be where if we have to change the project budget basically or change the project plan, this is where I'd ask for a decision to be confirmed. So as soon as there obviously money related to that, we would have a decision to affect it. So that would be where, or if we decide to drop, let's say a module initially was in scope, now it's out of scope, key decisions like that are added to the projects.
Okay. Any other question? Otherwise, I think I'm not sure if I want to go in details, Dominic, but maybe since you're already sharing, if you have the deck open, we can show the timesheet objects. If there is some question we can explore, but otherwise I'll keep it light so we don't spend a ton of time. So I'm just going to do a first pass, and then Dominic, if you can complement the way that it's structured within the system. So now we're switching, right? We're coming back to Client, and just the idea here is just to give you an understanding of, because we're in execution, it's a lot about time entry. So so you understand properly the object architecture.
And it's a recurrent subject also. We often have to make sure that this is understood so that we report correctly, and eventually we correct if there's any corrections to be done correctly. Sorry, Yanick, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's tough. This is a diagram that should be updated because there's more data that we can add, but at least it serves as a base that that explain what it does. So here you see that on the my timesheet UI, the blue thing is on the left, and then if you look at the white box timesheet, this is what you really see when you opening up your my timesheet. So within this, what you have, it's depending again of the settings, but we do encourage all our customers to have this check. It's going to create one timesheet per project. There's a possibility to just have one timesheet per account, but we do recommend for approval process and for other reason that quite often that you use one timesheet per project, mainly for approval. Dominic, is there any?
Yeah, and really it's case by case when you have, depending on your needs. It's just if we go for approval and you have one person approving for everyone, you could go by resource. If you have PMs approving and reviewing that and you just want them to see only the projects they have and don't bother with all the other projects, then you would go by project. So there's different key points there we need to see and review if so that one makes sense.
Exactly. So, but the timesheet at the end, you mentioned something like resource. It's not written here, but it's the timesheet is a link between one resource, a week, and then a project or not.
Yep.
Okay. After that, the other object that's created, it's a timesheet detail, which is a timesheet detail. We don't use it as much. The UI use it, but operationally, it's for me at least, Dominic, maybe you can tell, give a little bit color, but it's not an object I'm using when I don't want to do any kind of
Not for
operation.
reporting. As you said, it's more in the background. The timesheet detail is like the mother of driving some of the information. The result is the timesheet split, but it serves as a transition object here,
Yeah.
the detail.
And then the real object that have the smallest increment of time per day. And also it's within a timesheet, within a project, within a task, within one role, within one rate, within one resource. So it's the timesheet split. So the timesheet split, it's that object that you quite often want to report on. So when you're looking at the revenue dashboards based on hours, not cash, based on hours, you're going to use the timesheet split. So the object that you want to use to report is timesheet split. The timesheet split will be created and changed from the different UI. So yes, maybe you can add some custom fill, but you need to be careful because it might change. But what's driving it's really those three objects: timesheet detail, and timesheet split.
And the one thing that we need to understand is that the timesheet split really is, and it's read only, so it's not something we can act upon directly. So if there's any corrections we need to do, maybe a time entry that is not right or not in the right project, this is that kind of tricky part that we need to understand, is that what's driving the timesheet split, creating, removing, is the timesheet detail. Because a timesheet detail is every line you might have on your timesheet is a timesheet detail record. So it serves for displaying the information, to interact with the information. And then it serves, as we see here, main thing is billable flag, bill rate, cost rate that you might have on the project or on a task, depending on where that bill rate might come from. That's where the information will get pushed, or this is the timesheet detail will push the information to the split. So whenever you go into your timesheet, change a number, change a comment, the detail kind of acts upon that. Is that a Monday? Is that a Tuesday or Friday? Then creates a timesheet split to the proper date with the information. So if ever we need to change because for some reason the task was not flagged as billable but should be, eventually if you want to make those corrections, you need to circle back to the detail itself, make sure it represents the right information. If probably would need to be unapproved, so maybe the timesheet was approved, you need to unlock it if you have a locking mechanism with the approval process on the timesheet. Change the detail so it represents the right information. Then the timesheet split is going to be updated accordingly. So this is the only thing here. The source of truth at the timesheet split, but the way we can act upon that source of truth is really the timesheet and timesheet detail. No action direct on timesheet split. So it's a bit, it's really architecture, but it's questions that comes, in each project, and it's often the part that is needs to be understood correctly, and is sometimes a bit more complex to understand. So
Yeah, and usually you would prefer if everybody just use the UI so they don't mess up with the different
yes.
objects. So just don't. We're just telling you that so you know, and then you can maybe build more reports and dashboard. But really, what we're looking at is it's the architecture more than anything else.
So
Okay.
yeah, each line here is a detail, and then eventually each square is split. So every time you have a line, you have a new detail in the background. So
Okay. Thank you, Dominic. If there's nothing else in terms of question, this would be it for this week, and we'll see you next week for the invoicing part. Oh, there's
there's
one
a
just
question. Oh,
popped
yep.
in. Uh, the question is about missing timesheet report. So no, it's fine now. Missing timesheet report. So if you're in the list, how do you get removed from that list? There's a couple of things you can go and just delete it, but I do believe if it's because the missing timesheet is not looking at the entire history, it's just looking at the last 2 weeks, I believe, when the resource runs. So if I'm not mistaken, Dominic, or we can check with the team, I think it's going to remove it for if it's within the last 2 weeks. Otherwise, you will need to go in and delete it manually. Dominic, is it something that you
Yeah, we could refine. I think they stay there. We would probably need to remove them.
manually? Okay, that's possible
Think
too.
so, but
Yeah.
again,
But you can delete the record if there's something. Oh. Okay. Anything else? We're good. Perfect. So thank you very much again for your time. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next week.
see you.
Bye bye.